Woke, woke. There are so many things going on around. You must take heed. It's been written and prophesied about, so you must believe. Not everything that glitters is gold. Pay attention as it's been told. Join us every Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern, with Brother Yusuf as he tackles and breaks down current events, current news, and politics, and the Islamic Ummah. Please join us, streaming on all major platforms. Channel Sunnahfollowers.
I mean, I had one time, a black guy tell me, oh, well, blacks are superior at athletics, which there's largely some truth to that for some scientific reasons. But this guy was overweight, couldn't jump, couldn't do anything. I've seen white supremacists talking about how superior we built this, we built that. I didn't see you build anything. I mean, to be honest, I see other people did it, but I didn't see you actually build. You're a janitor that works at this particular establishment or whatnot. So it's always kind of funny when people try to find an identity in the accomplishments of others. I've never done that myself. Whatever my ancestors created, that's their own, it's not mine. It's nothing of source of pride, per se. I got to be proud or ashamed of the things I've accomplished. And you see this type of stuff. I've had Saudis tell me, oh, Prophet Muhammad was a Saudi. I'm like, well, you're not Prophet Muhammad's son. I mean, so you can't basically try to piggyback off of his tribe or his race and put those accomplishments on yourself, because all I see here in front of me is someone who hasn't accomplished anything, trying to, use someone else to justify their existence. So these people are always quite comical, to say the least. I just wanted to add that in the beginning. So we have a pretty loaded show today. It's mainly a one-topic show with two smaller topics in the beginning. People had talked about, and I've been mentioning through my work here and there, bits and pieces about this daunting Agenda 2030. And I really felt it was something that needed to be unpacked in detail. And I promised a brother a couple of weeks ago that I would have done it last week. But then we had this Kilmar Garcia thing, which I think affects the Muslim community, particularly here in America. We're going to talk about that in the opening, very short kind of recap, revision of what happened this week. Then we're going to move into some funny Donald Trump policy. Then we're going to get into the actual Agenda 2030, which is the bulk of what we're going to talk about today. And everyone can see how truly sinister this is. And you can use it as sort of a litmus test to see which governments are in the club, which leaders are in the club. And one of my favorite topics is the leaders. Blind following of the leaders is not something that I've ever promoted or advocated for. And you'll see again tonight as to why that is. So in a follow-up, last week, we talked about this illegal immigration issues, like that sore you have on the inside of your mouth that just doesn't go away. And you can't stop messing with it, and it just perpetuates, and it annoys you for periods of weeks at a time. And that's what illegal immigration has been to me in my life for the past 30 years. It's like a sore that just won't go away. And it just keeps getting more and more and more of it. And so we saw this past week, the MS-13 gang member who was deported, his wife, and the Democrats, again, they called him the Maryland father, the Maryland husband, the one who had been restraining order against him, the one who had been arrested, all these things connected with MS-13 by two judges. So they started posting pictures, his wife, of him and showing what a good Maryland father he was. And every picture she happened to post, she put the little hearts that you often see people put in their photos. She put those hearts on his hands. And of course, we all should know by now the reason why she did that, because she knows he's a gang member. She's covering up for the fact that he's a gang member. Some Democrat operative probably told her, hey, ma'am, it's great, post these photos, let's humanize this guy. Well, you got to cover up those MS-13 tattoos, obviously, because people are going to be out there again calling us out for the fact that the Democratic Party has been exposed again for the millionth time as being someone who openly supports the destruction of America. In fact, they're a tool to accomplish destruction of our lives and lead into the things I'm going to talk about in the end today. And this is, again, who the Muslim community, some of the leaders, I shouldn't all, obviously, some of the leaders in the Muslim community, some prominent figures, are coming to the defense of this man whose wife has to go out and put hearts on his hands to conceal his gang affiliations. So again, what kind of woman is this? I mean, just ask that question. I mean, you're a woman who's happily married to a gang member. I mean, this is someone who's dedicated his life not to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to basically, treating, there's the pictures there. Well, Donald Trump was showing how the M is signified there through the marijuana leaf. You have the S that's signified through the smiley face. You have basically the cross representing one, and then you have the two eyes and the mouth hole on the skull representing the three. This is common. They put the MS-13 on top of it to kind of just show what the letters. A lot of liberals came out and said, look, they superimposed it. Yeah, they did, because they were showing what those symbols, how they translate the MS-13. And this is, again, what this woman, covered up. And again, she's more than happy to be married to him. She's more than happy to call a husband someone who his life is basically poisoning people and killing people. I mean, this, again, just imagine, this type of woman, this type of mindset. And she's, glad and proud of this. Well, we should also make her happy and bring them back together by sending her down there where he is as well. And again, this is one of the many examples I kind of pointed out a couple of weeks ago when I talked about the importance in Islam of the father in the judgment of the marriage. I mean, as the determining factor, if the daughter should marry this guy or not. We as men, we know other men. We know when men are trash. Women get fooled, unfortunately, by the bravado, by the phony self-confidence, whatever they want to call it, the swagger, the aura, the motion is another slang they're using now. Women get fooled very easily by these things. And you see this woman now is married and openly promoted and happy that she's married to a gang member. Again, if there was a father determining that in the home, unless the father was just as messed up as him, he would have obviously stopped this. Because again, we've got to think when you talk about marriage, about what are the consequences of a marriage? What is the impact on the children? We are just creating a factory at this point of just low lives after low lives. These children never had a chance really to be something great. I mean, imagine the kids grow up and you ask them, what does your father do for a living? Well, he's an MS-13. He sells drugs. He probably killed someone to get in, which is a common initiation, ritual. And I can use an example why I hate drug dealers so much myself was because I grew up with a father who used drugs, who abused drugs, and who sold drugs. And my father taught me how to weigh drugs. My father taught me how to sell drugs. And my father gave me drugs. So just before even that point came in, the fact that he was doing them, what was I doing? Obviously, I was doing them as well. Now, granted, with myself, I stayed with the more weaker stuff, alhamdulillah. I was out of it, in no time, but mainly marijuana and things like that. But that's, again, the powerful influence that a father has on his children. And for me, I grew up, unfortunately, in that way. And again, when you see your father is doing this behavior is normalized. Selecting a husband is a decision that's going to impact not just you, but future generations. And it has unlimited potential to cause bad deeds. We talk a lot in Islam about a good deed being credited to you over a long period of time, such as planting a tree or creating a charity organization, creating something that off of it flows goodness, good deeds. Well, this gentleman's now going to create a cycle of the opposite. And again, this is someone that our government is promoting. So we had this woman who goes by the name of Maxine Dexter. She pledged to stay in El Salvador, and I'm sure the taxpayers in Oregon are going to pay for this until he's returned. That's how just adamant she is that we've got to bring a gang member back. Society's really missing out on the next invention and the next improvement, if you will, because this guy is not here. It's a joke. And she resides in Portland, Oregon. If any of you, particularly those not in the United States, are familiar with Portland, Oregon, it is liberalism on steroids. When I referenced the white populations last week and I showed those studies about liberalism and its mental effects and how 40% of people who would profess to be far left, who were white Americans, had a mental disorder, the profession, the healthcare provider had told them, you have a mental disorder at some point in time in your life. These people are mentally ill. They are so hell-bent, the shaitan has taken them over to the point that they view destroying their society as almost as a good thing. It's a nobility, to help this person, because this woman is so infused with what we call white guilt that she thinks that because this is a brown-skinned man that she has to go out of her way to do everything she can to help him because somehow, indirectly, it's our fault. I mean, that's really how sick, this is going. And when you see other pictures of this woman, she's really the face of someone who has a mental disorder. No person like this should be anywhere near a decision-making capacity in any nation, much less a supposed first world nation like the United States. And the liberals have always, for years, tried to build this kind of non-white and homosexual, what you would call the word I'm looking for here, like this, group, this bond between these groups to unify them against the white indigenous population. And when issues like this come up, what happens is the liberals get shocked when they find out that the African American community was happy that he was deported. There were so many interviews of people throughout the streets in Maryland, in different cities, of African American descent. And all of them were saying, yes, get rid of this guy. He doesn't belong here. He has no business in the country. Coalition was the word I was looking for. It's been a long day. But they're trying to build this kind of coalition against the indigenous white population of this country. And it's just simply not working because most people are behind decency. They don't want to see this. Only someone, again, mentally ill or one of the controllers who's hell-bent on the destruction is going to basically condone this. And again, this is who Muslim public figures are trying to lead Muslims to people like Kilmar Garcia, to this woman's, party, telling her that we have a stake in this democracy and basically going through the Democratic Party. Just absolute nonsense. One of the most famous dirty tactics they use to try to accomplish their aims, and they do this now with Islam as well, they first start off by saying, well, Jesus wouldn't do this. Jesus would support the refugees. Jesus was a refugee. Jesus would support the illegals. You hear this all the time from the Christian pastors who are controlled or receiving their government benefits. They all say this. I've heard it for decades now. And now we're seeing the same thing with these Muslim leaders are doing it as well. Well, the Sahaba were refugees. The messenger was a feminist. He was a refugee. Yes, the Sahaba and the messenger were refugees. When they were invited, that's the key word here, invited to come to Yathrib, were they taking over you? They say this to the people, we're taking over you, we own you. Were they saying to pay for us to sit home and not work, pay for our children, let us sell drugs and break the law? The people of Yathrib welcomed them. There was a brotherhood. They welcomed the Prophet ﷺ. The Sahaba continued to improve the community. They built their own masjids. They built their own dwellings. They worked, and there was a brotherhood established there. It's nowhere even similar at all to what you're seeing here. No way, no how. They were not selling drugs. They were not promoting filth and vice. They were not raping the women in the streets like we're seeing with a lot of these refugees are doing. Street gangs, rapes, terror, knife fights, tribal wars being brought in from their own regions on our streets, discrimination against the host populations. Did the Messenger of Allah and the Sahaba advocate this? Absolutely not. But yet that's not going to stop them from trying to project, from trying to claim, oh, the Messenger was a refugee. The Sahaba were refugees. Jesus was a refugee. It is not the same. We can't fall for it. When you see people saying stuff like this, you know that they're not on our best side, so it's not with our best interest at heart. So to tie that in with the next thing we're going to look at, Donald Trump came out this week, and remember I talked about the birth rates a couple of weeks ago globally, and how the birth rates are well below replacement levels. Well, Donald Trump seems to think he's got a solution for this. Obviously, Donald Trump doesn't do really anything but play golf. These are people who are putting these things and saying, hey, go say that. So what his proposal was $5,000 to each mother who has a child. $5,000 to each mother who has a child. So let's unpack this, because this, again, the first time I heard this, first thing that reminded me of was I turned the clock back to 2008. When Hillary Clinton suggested this, myself and a lot of other people were posting in message boards at that time, this is absolutely insane. You know what this is going to cause. We don't even need to even speculate that. But the conservative movement said, oh, no, this is horrible. We can't allow this. Now Donald Trump says this. And it's like the conservatives are like, oh my God, this is a blessing from God. We have to do this. So I covered the reasons, again, for the birth rate declines and why they're below replacement levels 2 weeks ago. We showed study after study revealing the effects of modern society on women's dating choices. Women don't find most men attractive anymore due to those factors that we covered at length. You know, women don't want a family. They've been marketed for decades, a single life. This is what they're pursuing. This is why the birth rates are down. The men don't want responsibility anymore. They've been weakened. But if Donald Trump wanted to fix this problem, the first thing he should do is label every Zionist-controlled media outlet who've been promoting this toxic mess for the last 50 years. He would label them as treasonous, enemies of the people. He would seize their assets and hand those media companies over to other people who would use them more responsibly. Obviously, that's not going to be discussed, but that's really how you fix it. You take back control of the culture. You start bringing decency laws back to television, that you can't just put anything on television and media anymore. You can't put this filth and all this stuff. No. Because it's not about fixing things. It's about making the problems in the country worse, which is what I'm going to feed into Agenda 2030 here in a minute. If he wanted to fix it again, the living crisis of why people don't start families, another reason. They can't afford a home. They can't afford to live. He'd tell the illegals they've got 30 days to get out. That's that simple. You've got 30 days to exit this country, and then there's going to be a massive deportation operation. And dire consequences will be for those who do not leave. Once you did this, immediately the home prices in this country would plummet. They say that's a bad thing, but for those of us who are paying rent, who are trying to pay for our families, we would see, obviously, home prices going down is not a bad thing for us. It's a bad thing for the sharks on Wall Street, but it's not by any means a bad thing for us. He would remove these asylum claims from countries who are not even involved in war anymore, who have no legitimate asylum claims whatsoever, who are taking up resources. I'm going to link this right now with the home prices using examples in my city. So let's just show for a second how this is impacting us here in America. You know, I started renting my house in 2021. I've been in this particular house that we were living in, family home, 3 bedrooms. I paid $1,400 a month in 2021. In 2024, I was paying, with my new lease that was given to me by the landlord, I was paying approximately $2,100. I was receiving a $700 rent increase in a matter of these 4 years. It was going up every single year. A $700 increase. I mean, just imagine, again, you have to reach deeper and deeper into your pockets to be able to pay this. So we always hear, what's the excuse in the media? Government spending, inflation. Inflation is part of that. But they have a thing now called an inflation calculator. So you can actually see, if you go onto a website, type in inflation calculator in Google, you can type in a year. And you can look at what your dollar was worth in 2021 versus what your dollar is worth now. So I went, for the sake of this presentation, just to prove my point, I went in there. Inflation was 18% over the period of 2021 to 2024. My rent, based on this calculator, and pretty much you could do this with all of your rents, so you've seen this happen to you as well, $1,652 is what I should be paying, a $252 increase. So if this was all inflation, I would only be paying $1,652 for my home. But no, I'm paying $2,100. This is not inflation. This is a factor that these property owners charge so much because they can. In our area, as an example, we have tons of refugees from Syria who are living in accommodations that are paid for by the government and other charity organizations. If the property owner knows they're going to get a certain figure from the government because it's our taxpayer dollars, the government's taking our money, giving it to these charities and these agencies to house these people. I talked about this a couple of months ago. It's big business. They know that those vacancies are going to be filled like that because the government has always got an incentive It's a machine at this point to flood more and more refugees into our community. So they fix the price high. It's big business, big profits. Now the rent goes up. This landowner over here is like, wait a minute. Over here, they're charging $2,100 and people are paying it. Why don't I charge Joseph and his family $2,100? And that's basically exactly what is happening in my neighborhood as a microcosm for the entire country. This is going on everywhere. And the question that we need to ask as Americans, why are the refugees still here? Why were we paying for them in the first place? Asylum should be sought by the first country that you land in, not this one. This is obviously not the first country they would have fled war to. There are safe countries all the way around. That's where it should have been. This should have been in Turkey, should have been in Lebanon, should have been in Jordan. And in a lot of cases, they're going into these countries and taking these refugees out of these communities, like in Turkey particularly, and they fly them into the United States, and then our tax dollars pays for this. And this inflates the homes. The other aspect of this is the illegals that cross the border. They're also seeking asylum, even though they've crossed 4 to 5 safe countries as well along the way. And our government is doing the same exact thing. Catholic charities have been a big culprit in this. And again, we have no issue. I'm not sitting here advocating, to be cold and not help people. But we're helping people who are taking advantage of the system. If they truly needed help, would they allow, they would have stayed in Turkey, obviously. They would have stayed in Lebanon. They would have stayed in these places until the war was over. They would have returned home. But it's not about that. These people are shopping countries, in a lot of cases, searching for the biggest benefits. That's why you're seeing England is being overwhelmed to the point it's absolutely destroyed and wrecked because there's too many people are coming in. I saw in Ireland the other day, it's like 8,000 people from India per week are coming into Ireland. There's no war in India, but these people are claiming refugee status. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And you look at the rents in all these countries, they're all shooting straight up. And it's putting a huge burden on our families. And Donald Trump is not addressing any of this. He's suggesting giving $5,000. And we know who's going to reproduce if you offer free money. You're going to have the people in society who probably can't pay for the children. Drug addicts are going to get, a couple of weeks worth of heroin if they end up having a baby. God forbid the baby's going to have birth defects from this. And again, it's just absolute pure, insanity. There's got to be conditions for policies like this. I advocate rewarding American citizens, foundational Americans. We talked about foundational Americans a few months ago. African Americans, white Americans, Caucasian Americans, if you will, Asian Americans from Japan and China who came in the late 1800s, early 1900s. These are foundational Americans. These are people who have lineage here. They have a history here. They've assimilated. There's an American culture, even though there's a little bit still racism has not been solved. Obviously, it never probably will. But these are the people that deserve this help from the government, not someone who came over claiming they're fleeing war when they've been in 3 to 4 different countries and they're searching for the best benefits. I've come in contact with a lot of these people through circles in the local community. Most of them are not working. Most of them have no ambition to work. They're on food stamps and assisted living and all kinds of things. And again, we're paying for that. And this is what Donald Trump decides he wants to do, basically to solve this problem of low birth rates. And it's going to be an open season. The whole world's going to start coming in, even more than they already are, because they're going to want to get this $5,000 plus all the other additional government benefits that they are receiving. It's just pure insanity. And the Muslim community is supporting this, obviously. You're seeing prominent figures in our community and social media and YouTube are promoting this. They don't see a problem with it. And at the end of the day, when they start paying taxes, they're going to change their tune a little bit because they're going to be the ones that are funding and financing these type of people to come in here who have zero intention of becoming American, zero intention of learning the language. We spend millions a year, tens of millions, a year on translational services for people who refuse to learn English. It's just absolutely insane. So wanted to cover that because Donald Trump was pushing that around this week. Now for the main event. This has been talked about briefly off and on. It's where we're going to focus most of our time. And you're going to see how that issue, the illegal issue and all this ties into the bigger picture of what is going on in this world. Someone, unless you've lived under a rock, particularly if you've lived in the GCC countries, you couldn't go anywhere in the period of when I was over there, 2011 to 2018, without seeing signs and advertisements on the television of the 2030 agenda. This stuff was everywhere. They called it the 2030 agenda. They called it the 2030 vision. Now, in the West, when I was growing up, they called it Agenda 21. And Agenda 21 became so known in the early days of the internet that they kind of abandoned that language altogether because they were realizing that the American people were kind of waking up, some of us at least were waking up who weren't already awake before, to what is exactly going on, how sinister this plan for the future of humanity really is. But in the Gulf countries, it's celebrated. It's a sense of pride for the youth. They say, oh, the 2030 vision, we've made it. We're going to be players on the world stage. And as we're going to see, as usual, the joke is on them. So you'll see beyond a shadow of a doubt, by the end of the night, that any leader, any government promoting this agenda is part of the club. There's no such thing except for a few cases of independent rulers in this world. There you see some mention of the language used here in the West. In the Gulf, it's massive, as we're going to be looking at some of the projects that the Gulf is embracing and what they mean for us as Muslims and what they mean for anyone who's for human decency and human dignity. When these people are behind something, it's never going to be good. If anyone hasn't been keeping track in the last few decades, when they're promoting something as positive, it's never going to be positive for you. It is going to be positive for them. So again, it's been sold to all parts of the world as progress, openness. It is the opening to a new world, to a new era. And those statements are both true. Because see, when these people speak to you, they're the masters of what I call dual speak. On one hand, new, when you think of new, you think of fresh. It's new. You got a new car. You got a new home. But new doesn't have to mean good. New can be something that's just simply new. It can be tyranny. Tyranny is new. If you didn't have tyranny yesterday and you have tyranny today, it is new. So they like to use the language and hide this sinister agenda behind a lot of words. And we're going to look at a lot of those tonight and see how they invert these things. So again, the inherent meaning of the word doesn't necessarily mean good. New is just something that is different. And it is a new world, all right. And it is an opening for sure. It is an opening on the road to hell, both figuratively and literally. So you often hear now even companies talking about the term sustainable development. When you hear that phrase, sustainable development, you know after tonight what it means. No one will say, oh man, I didn't know what that means. That sounded good. Because again, sustainable development by itself is something that sounds good. Don't we all want to have development that is sustainable? You want to have a job and long-term prospects in life that are sustainable. You know, a part of we talked about our drug dealing friend earlier today. Being a drug dealer is not sustainable. You're going to be arrested, imprisoned, possibly murdered. It's not something that you could achieve long term. You don't see that many drug dealers, as an example, who are living as a career drug dealer into their 50s. Usually something has happened to them along the way. So when you think of sustainable, again, that's a good phrase in its core. But with these people, again, it's always something bad. So again, we're going to be looking at this amazing vision. Some of these targets, as you're going to see, they're right on schedule. Some are, I mean, we're living with them every day. We just don't know what it is. People don't know what it is, I should say. Some of these targets we're going to see are down the line. And right now, it doesn't look like they're going to meet the 2030 mark, just like they didn't meet the Agenda 21, because there's still something in the way. And it's us. And it's people complying with this. And we're going to look tonight at their tricks, how they're going to try to trick you into complying with this, how they're going to sell this, as they always do, as something that is good, beautiful, something that, how dare you not want to be a part of this? If you reject it, oh, you're a paranoid conspiracy theorist, you're a nut, you know, you're just behind, you're old-fashioned, like they say with Islam, you get the traditional values, you know, it's archaic, it's outdated, you know, you're not with the new. And all it takes, again, as we're going to see in this presentation, when they want to further this agenda, all they do simply is they stage an event. And we've seen two monumental events in our lifetime, which are going to be shown today as how they were leading the way for this agenda. 9/11, the phony September 11th attacks, as well as the phony COVID virus scam and pandemic. These are two monumental events which have reshaped the way we live, the way we operate. We're going to unpack that today. A lot of things from COVID are going to start to make sense. A lot of things from September 11th are going to start to make sense. So the first main premise of this movement is one world government. This is their dream. It's on the back of the U.S. $1 bill. Novus Ordo Seclorum, Annuit Coeptus, Enterprise crowned with success, New World Order of the Ages, New World Order of the Secular. It goes by multiple meanings. The Enterprise is crowned with success. It's happening. The New World Order of the Ages, the pyramid, the capstone missing, the all-seeing eye being raised above the pyramid, the foundation is about to be placed on the top, and the whole agenda will be firmly cemented. This is a very famous, phrase that a lot of people have had staring in the face every time they've used the dollar. They see that phrase staring at them. They never pondered its meaning or its purpose. We talked about a few weeks ago about economic zones. The EU, the European Union, was one such of those things. I talked about how Donald Trump's rhetoric and his direction is leading us into the North American Union. This is part of their agenda that's a bit off. They're going to need something big. A global war would be a perfect stage for them to propose this, because they would sell it, oh, we can't have another war like that. The only way to prevent a war like that is for us to merge and become one people under one government. You see all the ecumenical movements now that are being promoted in the Gulf, the Abrahamic religion uniting. All religions are equal. All cultures are equal. Everyone should unite. Unite behind what? A one world government, one world economic zone. European Union, Asian Union, American Union of North America, the 8 different economic zones I talked about from the Club of Rome. You have all those different geographical locations. They have to get that in place first before they're going to eventually merge us into this one world government, but that's the ultimate goal of the Agenda 2030. Now, the next big part of this is what they call the fourth industrial revolution. Again, that sounds great. It's a revolution. It's industrial. It's the fourth. Third was great. Second was great. Here comes the fourth. So part of the one world government is this. And this can be summarized as we're going to go into detail about a complete merger between the physical, the digital, and the biological. These are all key, as you're going to see as I unfold this agenda tonight. AI advancements and technology will be fully integrated into everything that we do. Everything you do, everything you think, every movement. It's an old song from the 1980s. Every breath you take, I'll be watching you. And it's literally what that is. And see, there you see right there, the packaging of the rhetoric. Gender equality. You can't laugh at these people enough. It is really just absolutely absurd the way they sell this. And when I go through what the fourth industrial revolution is, I want you to ask yourself, where's the gender equality? Where's the racial equality in any of this? So one of the first tenets of this fourth industrial revolution is a big one. Genetic engineering of who? Us. The genetic engineering of the human being. Part of the COVID scam was nanotechnology being placed in these experimental destructive vaccines that they forced and shoved down the people, the ones who gave in, the ones who trusted the system. Some of these were fake. This was a test. They were finding out exactly what they can do and not do, keep the people alive, make sure it doesn't kill them. But there's some obviously objectives of inserting this nanotechnology into people. Our good friend Elon Musk, who's a friend of the Muslim community, sarcasm there, Elon Musk talks about microchips in the brain. You know, Elon Musk sells, this is awesome. You can play video games while sitting on your couch. You don't even have to have a controller anymore. You will be able to make the movements of the character on the screen with your brain directly linked into the system. How could that be wrong? Elon Musk is behind it. Microchips in the brain. Needless to say, as we're going to cover this a little bit more, you're going to see where that whole thing is going. Drones will be providing services to us, and we will be under constant surveillance. We're already seeing the groundwork for this. They're trying to replace the delivery drivers, which have become a source of middle-class income for a lot of working Americans who simply can't find a job. Now, drones will deliver your packages to your dwellings. We'll get to the dwellings later, what they're going to be in this future world. So you're going to have drones delivering packages, drones everywhere in the sky, mapping you out with your mobile phone in the pocket and the nanotechnology. They intend everything will be fully integrated, body, mind, and soul, into this program. Facial recognition is a big one. Now, one of the things with COVID, they put the mask in for two reasons. Reason number one, they needed to get you sick. If you wear, me as a safety manager for 17 years, immediately when they started talking about cloth mask, I was telling everybody, you guys have no idea what this is going to do to your health. Bacterial pneumonia, you're breathing in cloth, there's no filtration. This is going to be, I would never allow my men who worked under me ever to wear a cloth mask before COVID, after COVID, because of the obvious health concerns. But yet the experts told us that wearing a mask would somehow save us from a virus, which was just, again, laughable. So the mask got you sick. If you got sick from the mask, the media is telling you there's a virus out here. What are you going to do? You're going to go down to their testing facilities. They're going to shove a rod up your nose. That's a different topic for a different day of what that was doing. And then they're going to say, oh, you got COVID. Then they're going to add that to the cases to keep justifying the lockdowns. The masks were always about this. And they were testing facial recognition technologies in a lot of big cities. And they wanted to make sure that even with these things, well, they could take the eyes and they could read the face perfectly and know who you were with limited visibility. So you had two things going on there at the same time. Keeping you sick to create the illusion that it's COVID getting you sick, not the bacteria that you're inhaling in by breathing your own exhaust, and the moisture that is collecting on those masks is then coming back into your respiratory system. Getting you sick, go test, you got COVID, boom. The scam continues. And then, of course, the facial technologies. They want to continue the genetic engineering program. There we go. The genetic engineering program for our food and soil. Everything must be modified and nothing will be natural. Most people do not realize that in order to grow the toxic food they're serving us, I'm referring to our produce now, corn, soybeans, green beans, potatoes, you name it. Most of this stuff has been genetically modified. They have put the pesticides in the genome of these foods. So basically, in order to grow this stuff, you have to have special soil, also sold by them. So you can't grow natural fruit anymore, or vegetables, in the soil that has been contaminated by their special soil to grow their genetically modified crops. So this is a way of taking away total self-sufficiency from the people. I talked about a few weeks ago in the setup for this. I mentioned you had the people in Europe in the top positions there from the head of the EU talking about banning people from organic farming because it was bad for the environment. Genetically modified foods have shown links to low IQ. They have shown behavioral development issues in children. And this is the food of the new world. It is what we call, in a joke in my community, we call it goy slop, because the Jews like to refer to us as goyim, and this is slop. It is goy slop. It is poisonous food for the masses. Another part of this agenda that was being rolled out in COVID was biological integration. So you've got people being injected with toxic nanotech vaccines, reworking their inner workings of their body. You got neurochips or nanochips in the brain, like Elon Musk's Neuralink program. You got the foods I just talked about. Now they want to integrate all your biological data also into a system. We saw this in COVID. They ran tests. It was called the vaccine passport system. So in order to board a train in France, let's say it's unlike here. Here, you can't use public transportation. It's almost non-existent in America. But in Europe, this is big for people going to work. Here, we drive our cars. Over there, they rely on the bus. And the buses basically take us to our jobs. So you couldn't get on a bus in France during this scam if you didn't have your vaccine ID. This ID would show all information about your blood, what vaccines you've been getting checked in. All your medical information was going to be integrated into a blockchain. into a massive data tracking system. So you couldn't go to work, you couldn't go in the office building, you couldn't basically ride the trains and the transports if you didn't have this vaccine passport. It was a test. It was a test to see how we would comply, and it was a test to see how smoothly this would operate. Biological integration is a big part of the fourth industrial revolution. Robotics. Robotics now being talked about to take over. Yeah, you see again here, biological injections for asthma after COVID. They create a problem and then they offer you a solution. You beg them for the solution. You line up like sheep outside the doctor's offices. You march right in for their medicine. Robotics. Why do they like robots so much? Well, for one, they don't like to pay. I covered that when I talked about slavery. And I made the link between the same people that are running the world now and the people that had slaves in this country. It's pretty much indistinguishable. They don't like paying us. They don't like giving us a good living. They'd much rather have robotics with very few humans to run these robotics. And that's one of the things they always tell you with the robots is, oh, don't worry, because for every robot, you're going to need someone to maintain it. That's just simply not true. The workforce would be slashed significantly. But the main thing they want with the robots, it is not work. It is to kill. And this will be the army of their new world. And they've already pretty much admitted this. They've got police robots coming out now, these little like walking dog-like things. China's got them. They're everywhere. And when they did a litmus test for the United States military, I believe it was back in 2012 or 13. I'm kind of pulling out of a lot of deep archives in my mind here, but they had done a test on the U.S. soldiers, and they asked them, would they fire on American citizens if they were fighting their government? And the majority of the soldiers in the U.S. Army said no. They would not fire on American citizens. They don't want that. Robots aren't lovers. You know, they're not romantics. They're not basically here to be hospitable. They are here to serve. They are here to do what they were programmed to. The robot army, as you see right here, it is on the way. It's not just about the factories. It's not just about speeding up our services. Because again, they're going to sell this to you as, oh, we're going to make your life better. I even heard Will Smith's son, who dresses like a woman, he was saying, oh, this new world is going to be so amazing. You're going to be able to focus on music and creativity because the robots are going to do everything. Exactly. The Internet of Things is another tenet of this agenda. Now, what does the Internet of Things mean? They use this term a lot. It's a full integration, again, of all aspects of your life. They will have, and they already pretty much do, but it's going to get more and more. They will have a full profile on you and everything you do, everything you buy through blockchain technology. They're already integrating this with the apps like Kroger, the popular grocery store chain here in the United States. They want you to use the Kroger app now, and they give you all these amazing deals. If you look at the digital deals in the Kroger app, you're like, oh my God, I never can get food that cheap. I've got to use the app. And you download the app, you get your digital deal, but what are they doing? They're assigning your purchases to your profile. They know you. They know what you eat, what you buy. They're going to then know in the future, again, how to use that information to sell to you, to market to you, to know what kind of person you are. They used Facebook originally also for this as well because people post their life stories on Facebook. They post all this stuff about what they are, what they do. You know, again, you can see here trying to stop this from getting underway, but eventually it's going to come through. It's already been in the works, and they're always going to sell it to you as progress and innovation. You already have shows. There's a famous show that comes on in Ramadan every year in Saudi Arabia. It's hosted by a man named Ahmed Shigeri or Mohammed Shigeri. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. It's something. He's very famous from a prominent Saudi family. When I first moved to the Gulf, my wife's family used to watch this show, and they had English subtitles available, and I would watch. And it was a pretty wholesome, positive Islamic show in 2012 and 13. He was promoting cleaning up water, taking care of your environment, taking care of yourself, donating charity, building schools, and things like that, because they're always going to suck you in with something positive. Oh, look, great, I trust this guy, I'm going to believe everything he says now. And then a few years later, You started seeing in Ramadan, what was he promoting? He's promoting robotics, Internet of Things, full integration. He was promoting biological data. He was promoting vaccine passports. He was promoting all these things, and the Saudi population and the Arab population was eating it up. They trusted this man from decades of him promoting good, wholesome Islamic content. Now you see he's opening up this. The next phase of this is what they call technocratic corporatism. This is another type of capitalism, basically, where you shift again from traditional manufacturing to a fully automated, digitized, keyword, service-based economy. We are seeing this in full swing right now. We are now transitioning. If you go back to the 1960s and the 1970s and 50s during the Cold War, the main backer of political parties in the United States, along with the Zionists as usual, was the military-industrial complex. It was the manufacturing industries. We're all shifting away from that now. What we are going to now is this. They want a full service-based economy. This is why you see your Facebooks, your Googles, Instagrams. These are the big players, your YouTubes. These are the ones now that have the power because it's all about entertainment, all about keeping you docile, distracted, focusing on nonsense and rubbish, and just buying junk that you don't need and controlling your interests, steering your interests, marketing you this way. And again, you're going to see, again, as this continues, massive conglomerates have tremendous wealth and power, billions and billions of dollars. BlackRock, as an example, they're $1 trillion asset management company. They're in everything. They're buying up homes. They're buying all your apartment buildings. They're buying up companies. They dictate the policy now, not the military-industrial complex in the days of old. And we have to really understand that this digitized, data-based economy, data has replaced oil as the most valuable asset in existence. Your data is worth billions of dollars, potential earnings for these conglomerates to keep you enslaved, by catering their approach to your needs, your purchasing decisions, your family, household, and all these different things. This is consumerism on steroids. We don't build anything. We don't make anything. We are going to completely be a service entertainment-based economy. That's why you see people like Sneeko signing 10, 12, $20 million contracts. This other gentleman, Aiden Ross, another similar one. All these wretched, disgusting people in social media that are getting millions of views. They're getting massive streaming contracts because your entertainment and keeping you distracted is prime real estate for them. They've got to keep your attention away from the world and keep you locked into a digitized box. And all this, of course, as you can see where it's going, leads to a total dependence on the state in every aspect. The human being of this world will have no ability to govern himself, to manage himself, to be self-sufficient in any way as possible, which we are going to outline now. Because once you've automated everything, where are the jobs? As I mentioned, there's still going to be jobs in programming, in maintenance, but hardly a fraction. All the service jobs I just talked about earlier are being replaced by drones. Elon Musk, he wants to get rid of the Uber. They don't like Uber drivers. They're making too much money. This is a middle-class job that now you can support a family by being a Lyft or an Uber Eats or a DoorDash driver. That's not good for them. They don't like that. They're going to get rid of that. And those companies are going to make all the money by having a robot come to the house in an automated car. So you're going to see massive amounts of jobs are just simply going to vanish unless we, of course, stop this. So what are people going to do for money? They're so nice, aren't they? Of course, they have a solution for that. And they've already figured it out. It's called universal basic income. This is a guaranteed figure of income, which there is to be paid weekly, bi-weekly, every week, every month. We don't know. They're already testing this in certain areas. So you're going to have this universal basic income where everybody is going to receive the same. So when you hear them all the time talking about equality, they say, oh, equality. It's another one of those words, isn't it? It's like new. Equality. Equal. Who doesn't want everybody to be equal? Well, you can be equal in living good or you can be equal in living bad. Obviously, again, you invert the apparent meaning when these people say something, and then you're going to get the actual meaning. They do mean equality, all right. Everybody living absolutely the lowest of the low of standards they decide to give you. So again, it's another one of those words that you hear that, you think beautiful. They talked about earlier, Sister Layla put the article up. Gender equality. That's going to happen in our 2030 agenda. Well, yeah, it will, because they're going to completely, as we're going to look at, destroy husbands and wives. They're going to break up the family. Everybody's going to be equal, equally poor, equally destitute, equally sick, equally depressed, equally frustrated. That's what's down the line. So the man of the future will be a dependent on the state. He must obey and he must comply, or he's not going to be able to live. The little bit of food they decide to give you with your monthly allowances, you're not going to be able to get it. As part of this will be, I talked about this a few weeks ago, is the controlled central bank digital currency. This will be like paper money. They love this, the Zionists. It's money you can create out of thin air. You can assign value to it, and they can simply become wealthy off doing literally nothing. With the dollar, they just print it. With here, they just simply program it. It's the same scam. It's just digital now versus paper. So the money here is a little bit worse than the dollar. The dollar, they destroy its value over a long period of time. With this money, they just wipe it out. And we had the head of the EU recently stating this, that this was going to be implemented and tested in October of this year. You are going to have programmable money that is set to expire. So you don't use it, you lose it. It's gone. You will not be able to save. You will not be able to plan for the future. Why would you? They're going to give you universal basic income. They're going to give you a house, an apartment, one room, if that, half of a room. And you have no need to have a job. You have no need. It's going to be a great future. As Will Smith's son said, just be focused on music and art and creativity and live the life you always imagined. You're not going to be burdened again by responsibility. So you will be able to kiss this money goodbye if you don't use it. It gets even better. They're going to tie this money, as they've said, into your social credit score and your carbon footprint. So if you're a bad boy, you're going to get cut off. If you speak ill of their government, their society, well, guess what? They're going to hit delete on that keyboard or disable. There it goes. This is already happening in China. People who refuse vaccinations. I was reading this week as I was preparing for this. It's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me another evidence. They're literally having massive amounts of people in China who are homeless. Why? Not because they're not working, not because they're not productive people like the Mr. Kilmar Garcia we talked about earlier. No, because they simply refuse to get vaccinated. They were given a bad score, and they were buried there without question. So now they can't work, no money. They're buried literally, figuratively. Might as well make them, literally in the ground. They have no chance of earning for themselves because they went against the standard. With a carbon footprint, they're going to use this to their phony climate change agenda, where they're going to determine how much meat you're able to consume. They don't want you eating healthy proteins and amino acids. They don't want you eating red meat. There's been a war on red meat for a long time. They don't want you eating that. That's beneficial. It's loaded with nutrients and vitamins. They don't want you eating eggs. That's why the eggs are so high right now. That's why they're going to continue to go high. They don't want you eating that. They want you eating a limited amount, bare minimum to get by, which is going to make you ripe for what? Diseases, deficiencies, genetic disorders, if they allow you to reproduce, as we're going to get to that one here in a minute. So again, during COVID, we were seeing this, obviously, with that vaccine passport system where you couldn't board public transportations and all these things. They've already tried it, as I mentioned earlier, in the West. They're just going to tie more and more stuff into it. Here's our good Muslim brothers over there in the UAE, the rulers that we're supposed to blindly follow, according to Mr. Farith Hamadi over there. What did the UAE do during COVID? They did one of the most sinister things. It's almost out of a science fiction movie. When I was reading this during the COVID scam back in 2021 to 22, I was I knew UAE was bad, but I was just at this point like, wow, they really went for it, didn't they? Well, what they did was they forced the population to download an application. And with this application, it would link in and they would track where you are, obviously, but better, because you'd have 3 or 4 people in your house, everybody had the application turned on, they would tell that you had 3 or 4 people in your house. You were not allowed to have that during the COVID scam, so they could send the police over to your house and say you can't have ma, grandpa, and your sister and brother in your house at the same time. And did the people rebel? Of course not. They said, oh, this is a pandemic. They're trying to keep us safe. And they failed the test because they're always going to test you to see what they can get away with. And they got away with this. No one challenged it. No one rioted. No one did anything. They blindly followed it. And guess what? If you didn't turn the app on, they would send a policeman to your house as well. This was going on in so-called Muslim nations under the guise of their saving lives. These, again, are the same people I talked about a few months ago about the American Heart Association that was fighting removing sugar, which is a known, hindrance on your heart, if you will, your heart health. They were fighting to keep it there for the food stamp recipients, to keep on taking sugar. If they cared so much about your health, why are they not addressing the #1 killer globally in heart disease? Why were they caring so much about this supposed virus that was killing 0.1%? That they're going to go out of their way for these applications and all these things they were doing because it was a test and the people failed the test. These people don't care about your health. They demonstrate that every day. We had the new president of the World Economic Forum this week. He said, clean drinking water, and I quote, is not a human right. For years, they told us that fluoride in the water was safe. They said, you're conspiracy theorists. Don't worry, your water is clean. Finally, the cat got out of the bag and everybody realized fluoride was bad for you. It lowers your IQ. It makes you more docile. This is now public knowledge. Guess what they say? Oh, yeah, well, it's not a human right. Who cares? Yeah, all those years we were lying to you. It is. You're not going to do anything, are you? And they're just that bold at this point. And the UAE government was that bold to put a system in like this. Another part of this agenda is they want the complete erasing of remedies and treatments. And one of the things during the COVID scam that disgusted me the most was the way that I watched the Muslims have just no faith. I mean, just fear. Muslims were the biggest cowards during this scam. The Christians were fighting. I was like, wow, why can't we be like this? The Muslims just, what do you want me to do, master? I'll do it. It was just so disgusting to see. And this is very un-Islamic. It's blasphemous. We learn in Sahih Bukhari, Hadith 582, the Prophet said there's no disease that Allah has created except that he has also created its treatment. Everything in the world has a natural cure. Everything Allah gave you in this world or put it in this world as a test, he gave you a solution. And these people, since the early 1900s with the Rockefeller Foundation, have been removing medicine, natural medicine, from the medical textbooks. When you go to be a doctor, you're never even learning about herbs and herbal treatments and natural treatments. Allah gave you the cure for everything in this world. And if you die, it's your time. You're going to Jannah if you were good. I just didn't understand, again, the level of fear and how these people, all the kuffar, we don't trust the kuffar. And they ran to their medical systems. They ran to their doctors. Here, stick this in me. Do this to me. And there was no pushback in the Muslim world at all. There were a couple Muslim figures. I will give them knowledge. I do disagree with these gentlemen. Muhammad Hijab was one of them. He did stand up against the vaccinations and did speak briefly on this. Now, he wouldn't acknowledge what COVID really was, which was a big, giant psychological operation, but he did discourage Muslims from taking the vaccine, and he deserves my respect for that. I don't agree with him on everything, but that was one good thing that he did. He was one of the only ones I saw that was taking this stance during this period of time. They were rolling out app after app. Saudi had the same thing. After UAE did it, Saudi had their version. So another part of this agenda as we're building a house here is population control. And we went through that again about the way they're driving the wedge between man and woman. But what their ultimate aim of this is controlling births. They've been clear, and I just saw an article today, they had the woman posing with a baby growing in an artificial womb. They're already working on this technology now to grow babies in artificial wombs. It's out there. It's not some conspiracy theory. It's not speculation or assumption. It is out there. They don't want natural births. This is not what they want. They want the population to be mathematically controlled and predetermined by them. So they will take genetic material and they will simply grow the babies in the labs. These artificial wombs are being implemented, and this is going to be the next phase of the agenda. So what they're going to do, you take a baby and you raise it in this environment. You are depriving the baby of all love, turning its life into nothing of pure misery. The child in the future will be brought into this world. Before it takes its first or second breath, it's not going to be in the loving arms of its mother. Everything about its life is going to be unnatural. It will not have that natural human connection to the mother. He's going to be bombarded, or she, with vaccinations, with implants. They're going to be creating a life of pure misery, never knowing the touch of the earth, the loving embrace of a mother, a friendly smile. These are things that have been proven time and time again have true advantages for child development. The baby needs to be with its mother. The baby needs to be smiled at, needs to be held. And these devils basically are devising a system to remove all that and pump you full of vaccines, which they're already pumping the children for these parents out here. I educated my wife on vaccines a long time ago before we had our kids. None of our kids had been vaccinated. And she didn't trust me for the longest period of time. She believed her family and things like that. And finally, after a while, she started seeing things. God was putting things in front of her. And she started seeing, wait a minute, my crazy husband may not be so crazy after all. And she was at a hospital recently with a family here in America who was having a child. And she was warning them about putting these vaccinations in the child. The nurse who was in the facility, who was administering the vaccines, told her, yeah, you're right. I would never put this in my baby either. The nurse was saying, I would not put this stuff in my baby. But the family there, the Muslim family, they trusted the doctor. They trusted the experts. They started the process. Why do you think there's so many allergies now? Why do you think there's so many cases of autism? Why are there all these other health problems that didn't exist in this type of significance 50 to 60 years ago? Again, this is the life they are trying to create. There'll be no motherhood, fatherhood, nothing. A cold-hearted, isolated existence where you're nothing more than a ward of the state. We can already see in Europe the way they're attacking the term mother and father. They're using it, oh, that offends a trans woman, or that offends a trans man, or that offends an LGBTQ couple who raised a son. He's got two fathers. So you can't say motherhood because that would offend the boy because he has two daddies. I mean, this insanity that they're promoting is all tied in. They want to remove these terms. And again, you're going to be under constant bombardment of these chemicals and unnatural substances. Another component to this is the EMF, the electromagnetic fields that, we are being exposed to. 5G, 6G is coming, 7G. Exposure to these will be a constant part of the life of the future. The integration, again, between the nanotech that they're going to be injecting you with these vaccines, coupled with this EMF radiation, will be able to manipulate and control human emotion and behavioral patterns. I remember this like it was yesterday. I was speaking to some people in a thrift store back in 2007 or 2008. And I was talking about how they were mapping out brain waves at the time, and they were going to learn how to control brain waves through artificial stimulation. I didn't know at the time how they were going to do this, but I knew because they had pretty much stated this was one of their goals. And there was a man there. He was a soldier in the United States military. And he came to me and he said, were you in the Army? And I said, no. He's like, well, how do you know about all this? And I said, what, how do you mean? How do I know about what? He said, what you were just talking about. He said, because when I was in Iraq, they asked me if I wanted to take part in an experimental program. And the program, they would inject you with nanotech, and it would be a chip. And what they wanted to do was map the brain activity during stress for soldiers in combat. Now, of course, they were doing this for your health, as they always say, but at the end of the day, what they were doing was mapping out brain activity. So they would be able to find a way to turn signals on and change how you think or feel. I believe already to a certain extent they're doing this now, because I can ask everyone who's watching me who lives in the West. The world really has been different since the COVID pandemic, this COVID scamdemic, if you will. I noticed myself, I feel different. I'm depressed a lot more than I ever was in the previous 10 years, maybe in a month. I have issues with brain fog. I have all kinds of issues I've had with sleep. I mean, the world really feels in so many ways different post 2021 than it was before. And I think that the reason for that was the rollout of 5G was happening quietly while the country was locked down. Donald Trump, in fact, he gave tons of money as he was in 2020 and 19 to be able to fund this. So, of course, obviously, the Don is in on it, as always. At least he signs the checks. And we saw this rollout. And since that period of time, I've talked to so many people, and they've told me the same thing. They're like, I don't feel like I used to feel. I don't feel as sharp anymore. I don't feel like I'm the same person. There's something going on, and we're already seeing the beginnings of this. So where will we live, in this world? Well, one of the things that's a big part of this agenda is restricting access to air travel. They don't want you to travel the world. In fact, they're eventually going to remove it. They've tried everything over the last decades to get you to abandon air travel naturally, but it hasn't worked. One of the big things that came out of September 11th, I'm 45 years old, almost 46. Most Americans, we remember the 1990s and how easy it was to fly, how easy it was to travel. My mother, when I was a kid, I flew to meet my aunt in Florida. She walked me to the plane. I was flying by myself. She walked me to the plane. There wasn't remove your shoes, remove your belt. These TSA people are some of the most rudest, arrogant, just entitled, bad human beings you can meet. I've had fights with them on several occasions. They humiliated me and my family with my young 1.5-year-old son. They made him get out of the stroller. They made me wake him up. And he's crying and screaming, because they had to search him and they had to search the stroller. I mean, it's just the things and the indignities that people have undergone since September 11th in the airports. It's made me not want to fly. I mean, I've only flown when I had to because I don't want to go and I don't want to deal with that. And again, they're conditioning to make the experience of travel as miserable as possible. They're even talking now, they're building new planes where they're going to pack you in like sardines in a can to make the experience on the plane as miserable as possible. We saw during the COVID scam, again, this was going on. They were making the babies wear the mask. The infant had to wear the mask. The infant's crying. It can't breathe. Its mother's trying to keep the mask on its face. The poor baby. We saw all these videos of these animals, these devils, what they were doing to people during this to make this experience as much of a nightmare as possible. And then the final part of this is the rise of the smart city, where we're going to take everything we've covered from the controlled births, the nanotech, the fake food, the vaccinations, the Internet of Things, the merging of all your bio data into one database, the facial recognition technology, the EMF radiation, and you're going to be placed in smart cities. Good old Saudi Arabia, our good leaders there, they've worked on 3 of these right now. They go by the names of Neom, the Muqab, and the Line. These sound like very Islamic names. The line is one of the most disturbing. This is a literal line that's going to stretch out over a huge amount of land space there. Now, I've even seen some very disgusting and disingenuous Saudi apologists in the Muslim community. Oh, well, they recognize the West needs vice and the West needs alcohol and all these things. So we are basically going to put all those people there and protect the Muslims. It's like, it's a joke. If you've seen the Muqab, this Muqab they're building in Riyadh, this thing is going to be a replica, literally, of the Kaaba. They claim that's not what it is, but obviously that's what it is. In this Muqab, you're going to have digital screens that are going to present landscapes to you that rotate around. You're going to basically live inside of this Kaaba, they want to call it, this cube. And this is where you're going to spend your life. It's going to have your grocery stores. It's going to have your libraries, everything you ever could imagine, your coffee shops, all in this cube in the middle of Riyadh. The line will be all in this line. And then, of course, they have the big one, which is Neom. And the Saudis are so proud to show this to the world. This is their crowning achievement. This is what they want on their tombstone, if you will, for their reign, is the building of these cities. And these cities are nothing more than digital prisons. That's what it is. The man of this era will live his entire life. There it is right there. What a beautiful structure. This is a indoor prison camp that is designed to be, oh, look, they've got artificial growth and have water. You're going to live there. The whole background is going to be digitized. Needless to say, you're going to have sunlight and vitamin D removed from you, which is further going to make you miserable, depressed, and sick person. It's got the rotating, you see there in the middle, it's going to be like restaurants and other things that spiral around and rotate. I mean, I couldn't believe a year and a half ago when I was reading this. I knew the Saudi government was what they were, but this was, again, just too much of a slap in the face to Islam, to the Muslim community. And this is where they're going. And again, you're going to live in here. No access to nature, digital artificial environment. Everything will be you're removed from sun, removed from touching the earth, removed from your God-given right to live in the creation of our Creator, and everything being man-made. Now, of course, initially, will it start off as a prison camp? Absolutely not, because they're not going to do it that way. It's going to incrementally. The first thing, why would you want to leave? Why would you ever want to leave? You have everything your heart desires. It's going to go from why would you want to leave? You can't leave. And we already are seeing this in Europe, where they are basically, during COVID, were limiting people from leaving their neighborhoods. They were having guards and all these things there to stop people from freely traveling. They don't want mobility. If you're able to move around, you're able to mobilize, you're able to work with other people, you're able to grow. They don't want growth. They don't want mobilization. They want you stagnant and depressed and on drugs and into this very, very low state of misery. So again, this was kind of a very loaded area. Tonight I gave kind of some bullet points. Each one of these could go into its own talk, as Sister Layla is putting up now. The size of this, the backgrounds here. It's happening, brothers and sisters. It is, and our own leaders are doing, our own so-called leaders are a part of this. They're not our friends, not by any means. And again, telling you, oh, it's beautiful, it's nature. They had the white guy out there looking up to the sun that you're not going to be able to see, the sun that's going to be concealed. You're going to be looking up at a digitized screen with a fake sun. And then, of course, you have the line, all these different futuristic cities, and they're telling you like this is the old cartoon, The Jetsons, like this is some kind of amazing new world. And with controlled births, controlled populations, all the land will be open. People are not going to be allowed anymore to visit nature, visit the parks. You are going to be living here. And every aspect of your existence is going to be controlled. And this is what the 2030 agenda is. It is not beautiful. It is not change. Well, it's change. It's not positive change. It's not something that the Islamic community should be celebrating in any way, but yet you ask the average Saudi, they're in love with these things. They love these projects. This is progress. They're on the world stage. They're too blinded. Now, they're not spending $800 billion because they love you. They're not spending $800 billion to make your life happy. No. Since when in human history have our rulers ever spent tremendous amount of money to better the life of their people? That has not happened outside of the Sahaba, outside of Umar. May Allah be pleased with him, outside of Ali. May Allah be pleased with him, of course, outside the Prophet ﷺ or other prophets. Have you ever seen leaders actually actively promoting the interests of their people? And they're going to spend $800 billion on just one of these. So not for our best interest, to say the least. So I'm going to close there.